It is indeed, and this has been a hot topic, transformation among the banks, although it's been lost today with so many hot topics. So we thought we'd highlight what came out in Parliament today. Our chart of the day relates to black ownership of banks. And these levels may be surprising. You can see since 2012, it's been above 25%. And that's because the banks have been accused, especially of late, of being bastions of so-called white monopoly capital. Well, public hearings were held today, jointly hosted by Parliament's Standing Committee on Finance and the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry on Transformation in the finance services sector. It was all about transformation in the banks. Now, you'll see that in terms of ownership, the figure last year, 2 years ago, 2015, was above 26%. The MD of the Banking Association, Cas Coovadia, says the truth around this ownership should dispel myths about so-called white monopoly capital. Well, he's still in the parliamentary precinct. He joins us now from our studio there. Good evening to you, Cas. So we've got these levels above 25, maybe 26%, but lately we like to distinguish between direct and indirect ownership. Just tell us a bit more about the picture of ownership.
Hi, Francis. How are you? Firstly, it was public hearings on the entire financial sector, not just the banking sector, and there were inputs including from the assurance houses, from microfinances, and so on. On the ownership issue, the point we made was that 49% of the top 6 banks through the stock exchange are owned by foreigners, foreign investments through institutions that represent pension funds and so on. Another 34% owned by institutions in the country, like the PIC, like Allen Gray, and others that actually manage pension funds. And 17% is owned by others, which would be individuals and groups of individuals and consortia and so on. So this myth about banks being owned by white monopoly capital is just that, it's a myth. And what we need to shift the debate towards is how do we have a more diversified financial sector? And some MPs actually made this point, where we encourage and promote, for instance, cooperative banks that could be black-owned, promote different types of financial institutions that are regulated differently, but still regulated properly, that have different capital requirements and so on, that could have more significant ownership by individuals or consortia, be they black consortia or white consortia. And so I think that what we would want to do is we'd want to engage with the committees more substantively and with other stakeholders to look at the hard issues we need to talk about related to transformation in the sector and in the economy, and how we build on the successes we've already had in the last 10 years or so, and address shortcomings that are still there, but within the context of an understanding that banks do operate in a particular way, they are regulated in a particular way, they are globally connected, and this is not just a South African phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon. And those are the sorts of discussions we'd like to get into.
Cas, if we want to be stark about it, I like what you've mentioned, that the JSE itself, overwhelmingly owned by foreigners, which I don't think is often spoken about. But then if we exclude them, what are the figures of black ownership versus white? Because that is what the debate is all about.
Well, that's what the debate is all about. And the major banks did do black ownership deals. Okay, and they created significant value. I don't have my papers with me, but if I remember correctly, the point we made is that 39 billion rand in value has been created for black shareholders who bought shares in banks through consortia and so on. But black shareholders, like any other shareholders, when they want to opt out of those investments when those investments have shown value, and they want capital to invest elsewhere or to expand their businesses or so, they sell. And that's what's happened. Black shareholders who were enabled through loans by banks to actually purchase shares in the banks, once the lockup periods have gone, sell their shares and move on. And given that banks have to go out into the capital market regularly to raise capital, that's the nature of their business, they have no control on whether a black consortium or an institution or others take up that offer of capital in the public. And so I think that what I would like to see, if I was measuring ownership, measuring transformation of banks in the next 5 years, what would I measure that against in the next 5 years? I'd want to see a significant amount more black people participating in the banking sector, opening accounts, having savings accounts, being able to borrow, using mortgages to buy homes, funding their own businesses, and actually through that process of transacting through the banking infrastructure, actually improving their lives.
Cas, I hear what you're saying.
And I think that's what transformation should be about.
I hear what you're saying, but I think people will focus on managers, say, on owners, on things like that. Can I sum you up correctly today to say that the banks are not fully transformed, but by no means are they the worst sector, and they are improving?
No, absolutely, and we've acknowledged. So you talk of senior management positions, we've acknowledged that that is an area where we've had difficulty, but it's also an area where other sectors have had difficulty. So we need to have a broad economic discussion on that. But all of the major banks have leadership institutes, have all sorts of training programs to move their junior and middle managers into senior management position, and I think we'll see the difference in the next few years. We identified a couple of other areas that need more work. So absolutely, there's a lot more work to be done in transformation. But to actually say that banks are against transformation or have not transformed is, quite honestly, the data does not bear that out.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Cas Coovadia speaking to us from Parliament tonight, the MD of the Banking Association of South Africa.